Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Site-Specific Plan Amendment Community Meeting for the Drainsville District. I'm Heather Springs, a senior planner with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development. I am joined tonight by Clara Johnson, Mo Ali, and Katrina Knutson, who are also with the Planning Division. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I see that we have a watch party from the Vinson Hall community, so I'd like to say a big welcome and hello to all the residents. It's so great to have you all with us here tonight. I'm not sure if I saw Supervisor Bierman on here. I was going to introduce him. He may come in later, so I may introduce him in a minute. But we'll go ahead and get started. Tonight's meeting is being recorded. So we kindly request for everyone to remain muted until you're called on to speak. If you'd like to speak, please feel free to raise your hand. The feature to raise your hand is located in the bottom. You may also provide any comments using our chat feature at any point in time during the meeting, and a member of staff will be able to respond. The purpose of this meeting will be to review and discuss the Vinson Hall SSPA nominations submitted in the 2025 SSPA cycle in the Drainsville District. A schedule of the nominations can be found on our SSPA website using the link that staff will provide in the chat. There will also be a QR code at the closing slide of this presentation. Here's a look at our agenda for tonight. We'll be starting with an overview of the comprehensive plan and the site-specific plan amendment process. Then we'll take a few moments to address any questions or comments about the process or the comprehensive plan itself. Then from there, we'll give a staff overview of the nomination, followed by a presentation from the nominator. We'll have the remaining time this evening open for questions and comments from all of you. The countywide SSPA process provides an opportunity for property owners and other members of the public to propose land use changes as nominations to amend the comprehensive plan for either a single site or a collection of parcels. The goal of SSPA is to provide the community with an active role in shaping the long-term vision of Fairfax County. Once nominations have been accepted by the board, they enter the screening phase. The amendment we're discussing tonight is in the screening phase currently, and all of these community meetings are the first step. We'll gather your input on the nomination, share it with the Planning Commission and the board, and then using staff and Planning Commission recommendations, the board will make final decisions on which nominations will get added to the program for staff to study. To provide a sense of where this project is in terms of the development process, this diagram illustrates the life cycle nature of land development within the county. First, starting with a concept phase, this would be the site-specific plan nomination or amendment. Once a nomination is placed on our work program, it moves into what we call the planning stage. This is where we will look at impact analyses and plan recommendations. The next stage for the applicant would be to submit a rezoning application to initiate the zoning and entitlements process. The comprehensive plan is a multi-layered document used by both county staff and elected officials to guide land use decisions across communities of Fairfax County. The document provides recommendations on how land could be used in the future, how and where future growth can be accommodated, and guidance for the protection of environmental and cultural resources. A comprehensive plan is required in every locality in the state of Virginia. The policies within the comprehensive plan are guidance for making land use decisions. They are not a regulatory framework. The comprehensive plan is comprised of multiple elements. The policy plan encapsulates land use guidance that applies to development and redevelopment in every land area within the county. This section includes policies related to housing, affordability, public facilities, environmental protections, transportation, parks, and more. The comprehensive plan also contains area plan guidance. This guidance is more detailed and specific to the areas within the county. Nominations that move forward in our SSPA process become planning studies, which consider changes to area plan guidance. An important component of the recommendations found in the area plans is the concept for future development map shown here. This map provides the general framework for thinking about where growth is encouraged. The categories or land use classifications shown on the map represent a different set of recommendations on how these areas should grow and develop over time. The concentration of growth in the county is within transit station areas and mixed-use centers. As we discuss the nomination, there are a few terms that we use to describe development. Two of the most common terms are density and intensity. The terms are used to describe the quantity of development. Residential density is most often measured in dwelling units per acre. For example, a single-family detached dwelling is often planned at 1 to 2 or 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre, and this is considered low-density development. Townhouses are often at mid-range densities, such as 12 to 16 dwelling units per acre. Multifamily is often at higher densities. Garden-style apartments could be 16 to 20 dwelling units per acre, while high-rise developments could be 30 to 40 dwelling units per acre. Intensity is used to describe the quantity of non-residential and mixed-use developments, and it is often measured in floor area ratio, or FAR. FAR is calculated by dividing the floor area of a building by the land area of the development site. This building could take a variety of forms, as shown on the slide. A one-story, 100,000 square foot building would cover an entire 100,000 square foot parcel. A two-story building with 50,000 square foot floors would cover half of a 100,000 square foot parcel, and so on. Ooh. As we walk through the nomination, these concepts may begin to make a little bit more sense. The nomination period began on January 13th of this year. All of the nominations received were presented to the board on March 4th, where they were accepted by action item into the screening phase. The screening phase starts with community meetings like tonight's. There are a number of community meetings which began last week and will continue to run through the end of April for all nominations. Beginning May 1st through June, the Planning Commission will hold workshops open to the public, at which they will evaluate each nomination and develop recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. In early June, the Board of Supervisors will adopt the formal comprehensive plan work program for 2025. A total of 53 nominations were submitted in the 2025 SSPA cycle. The Board of Supervisors moved 43 of those forward to the screening phase. This slide shows the geographic distribution of the nominations across the county. If a nomination passes through screening and the board adds it to the work program, the board will prioritize the review and public engagement in coordination with all other plan amendments. In short, some nominations may be tiered for immediate review. Other nominations may be tiered later before staff is directed to allocate time to the reviews. If a nomination does not pass screening, it is not added to the plan amendment work program, and it will be removed from further consideration in this SSPA cycle. Property subject to an unsuccessful nomination could still have the potential to be developed under current plan recommendations or prior zoning approvals. We'll take about 5 to 10 minutes to pause here and answer any questions that you may have about the comprehensive plan or the SSPA process. While we're answering questions, you may use the QR code on the screen or the links provided in the chat to access the SSPA webpage and the community input survey. You'll also see upcoming dates for Planning Commission workshops on this slide. Staff will be compiling community input to share with the Planning Commission and the board throughout this process. Workshops are open to the public, and we invite you to continue following the nominations through this process. You'll see this information again at the end of the presentation. Look at the chat.
Heather, I see some hands up.
Do you? Because I don't.
Steve.
If you see him, go ahead and call him because I don't see him.
I see a Steve.
Okay.
Delbianco. If you have a question, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It's Steve Delbianco with Franklin Area Citizens Association, next door neighbors to Vinson Hall. As a process question, not about this SSPA, but the general process, what is the criteria that staff and the board use at determining whether to approve an SSPA? Is it different than the process of an ordinary special exceptions, special permit, proffers that are there? In other words, give us an idea about how you'll balance out costs and benefits to determine whether to grant this application. Thank you.
And let's see, I can take a first shot at answering that. There are two types of we're talking about two different processes. One is the screening process, and the question being asked and that the Planning Commission will ask themselves and the board will need to consider is, do these ideas merit study? This is a process to determine, will it get on staff's work program so that we can conduct a planning study? The criteria for that is, is it possible they are going to advance any county goals either expressed in the comprehensive plan or other strategic goals like the county strategic plan? So those are that's really broad criteria. And for a lot of the nominations, it's about housing. There are county goals about housing, and so that would be for screening. The other process that we're talking about is if this were to become a planning study, well, now there's other planning criteria. And at that point, we're involving schools planning, parks planning, transportation planning, all the public facilities planners, fire and safety. That's the kind of analysis that we would conduct during a planning study. Assume for any of these that make it on the work program. So does that begin to answer your question?
It does, and a follow-up would be an owner of a parcel has certain by right development that they can do outside of getting a plan amendment.
Yes.
Do you often then consider whether the applicant can simply bypass the plan amendment and do this by right? And do you evaluate what extra leverage the county obtains by bringing it into the screening process and trying to plan in a way that advances other county goals? In other words, do you take things in because you'd like to influence them more than if you allowed them to happen by right?
There are, well, there's two ways to answer that question. One is there are occasions when people ask for a plan amendment or a planning study, and it's determined that they actually don't need a plan amendment, that they can move ahead with the development they're trying to achieve with the current comprehensive plan. So sometimes that doesn't happen very often, but that's possible. And it can happen. The other is, the other way to answer your question is when we conduct a planning study, there is a conversation about what is the benefit to the community. And so I said advancing county goals, but there are county goals associated with quality of life for people living in Fairfax County. And so all of that needs to be considered. It's two possible futures. It's the future envisioned by the comprehensive plan today, And these nominations represent another possible future. We would, once you change the comprehensive plan, there's another possible future that we have to evaluate and ensure is appropriate. Does that?
It does, but it's slightly different question that if the applicant either is not get past screening or doesn't survive the development program, that applicant is free to go ahead and, as you say, develop the property under the previous comprehensive plan and whatever particular zoning applies to the site.
Yes,
So,
that's
that
true.
delta is what I would love to understand tonight as you dive into this specific SSPA. Thank you.
I see.
Could I ask something?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is after the June, something is going forward after the June timing? What is kind of the normal, or I don't know if there is such a thing as normal, but the kind of timeline before development begins usually on a property?
I can attempt that one as well. I think you were right in saying there isn't a normal. The first, I will say the last time we updated the work program, I think that was 2022, 2023 timeframe with a similar process. The first plan amendments were completed within a year. And then what happens after that is many of these require a rezoning case, a zoning application. That can take another, I don't know, 6-9 months to a year, depending on complexity. And then Heather had shown that wheel. Heather, maybe you can bring that up again if it's easy. Just bottom line is the soonest is probably 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
To get to something like construction, because then there are site plans, building permits. It's a process. This is really the planning stage is the process that really opens the door for making a lot of these proposals possible.
Thank you.
Sure. I'm just may not be able to see all the hands. If somebody wants to unmute, if they have a question about the process or what the comprehensive plan is, distinct from some of these other stages in development. And if not, we can get to the proposal itself. Okay. Sounds like we might be ready.
All right, so we'll jump into the nomination itself. Vinson Hall is a not-for-profit retirement community which opened on this site in 1969 along Old Dominion Drive and Kirby Road and is located near Chesterbrook Elementary School. The nomination covers 3 parcels and a total combined area of 18.1 acres. The current comprehensive plan recommendations for this site is 1 to 2 dwelling units per acre and public facilities, government, and institutional uses. The existing facility is considered institutional use and contains about 235 independent living units and 67 medical care units with associated surface and structured parking and open space. This is a total of 302 units at a 0.79 FAR. The area immediately to the south of the developed site is planned and developed at 1 to 2 dwelling units to the acre. To the north is a memory care facility associated with Vinson Hall. And to the east, across Old Dominion Drive, is the Chesterbrook Shopping Center. The concept plan shown here was provided with the nomination packet. The nomination includes a phased development approach with the ultimate conditions shown here. The buildings in dark gray are existing to remain. Buildings 1 through 7 shown here are new. The nomination proposes a plan option for a continuing care facility up to a 1.3 FAR. I'd now like to introduce the nominator, Mark Viani, to give a brief presentation.
Thanks, Heather, and thanks, Claire. I appreciate that. Do you want me to I know we set the presentation to you all. Do you want to pull that up, or I can pull it up from here, whichever
I-
is for
I
y'all?
have it incorporated in my slides, so if you just want to tell me when to go next,
All
I
right,
can
let's,
keep
let's,
it
let's
for you.
go to the first, go to the tape here. Go to
Started.
the first page. Appreciate it. First of all, I want to thank everybody for this is the beginning. I say this is the first pitch, the first inning of a long process. You know, and so Mr. Top, to your question, there is an SSPA process which this thing has to get through,
Mhm.
and then to be going forward, and then there that's the comprehensive plan process. As halfway through the comprehensive plan process, there will also be a rezoning process, assuming the
Right.
comprehensive plan is adopted.
Good.
All these processes build on each other, so if one's not successful, everything else below does not go forward. Obviously, our hope is that we would go through comprehensive plan amendment through the SSPA. Next step would be rezoning. Then once you're rezoned, the next step is then you go to what's called an engineering site plan. And that's really where, you take the plans that were approved in the rezoning. And in this case, we're looking at doing phases. So you would go for phase one, would immediately go to site plan for that. And the site plan takes about another 9, sometimes 12 months to go through that process. And then at that point, you typically get about 3 months for construction permits. So it's not unreasonable to expect this to be about 2.5 to 3 years. If you hit all the mark, all the typical tracks you would want to get before you're able to put a shovel in the ground for even for phase one. And then you're likely looking at probably about 1.5 years, 2 years for construction for that. So we're talking 5, 6 years out to see really any you know, significant changes in operations. But first of all, just thank everybody for my goal is for you not to hear me, but it's mostly to hear you guys. So I'll kind of walk through this in a little more abbreviated fashion, but we want to take questions and I don't want to like kind of gloss over things. So we just go to the next slide. With us in our team tonight is we have the executive leadership of Vinson Hall. Rob Rowe is the chief executive officer and the president. Richard Mazza, who's the chief CFO. We also have Stephanie Lawrence, the senior director of marketing. Michelle Crone, who's the community liaison, and Deborah Bloom is communications and public relations. I'm Mark Viani, with me as well as Andrew Gregg. We are the legal counsel for Vinson Hall. We also have the bowler team on here. I think tonight we have Sheila Null with us, and Jim Hudgens with THW Design. They're the architects. And lastly, and importantly, is Jack Garrett, who's with Aventus. He's the director of development, kind of the project manager for this whole thing. So as the project goes from various phases, Jack will be kind of the one constant. He's kind of running through everything. But that's who we have here. And so the team is here available to answer questions. Let's go to the next slide real quick. Yeah, obviously I think everybody understands, who Vinson Hall is. It's been around for at this point about 60 years or so. And it's been 22 acres right now. They are a 501c3 nonprofit. They were initially established for as a retirement community for Navy, Marine, and Coast Guard. I live down by the Mount Vernon district. We actually have a compartment for that for the Army. Both those societies are now changed, and so they are open to all retirees. And the goal basically to be, the goal of this been to be a community serving, institution, allowing people to age in their neighborhood or allow people to age near their families. We can go to the next slide. It is a life plan community. Right now we've got about 400 units and 400 residents in independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing. And most folks actually come from McLean, from Northern Virginia area, or their children are located immediately nearby. Uh, One of the things that's kind of nice is when you look at the culture of the facility, I think many of you folks have been there. And if not, we certainly invite people to come there. It is a very welcoming place, by the way. There's kind of this common commitment to government service and to community service, even in retirement. We'll talk about some of the examples of that in the next slides. But, they're very well connected with many of the civic organizations and local service organizations in the area. Next slide. By way of example, very involved in Chesterbrook Elementary School, particularly on Veterans Day, Potomac School. I'll let you kind of look through the list here, but long story short, it's people who want to live and get some value out of being, of service, and that's it provides a nice place for people to be able to live where they age in place and continue to, you know, give back to the community, and do so in a way that enables them to continue to do that as people go through the various changes in life that may take them from independent living to assisted living to memory care. By way of example, I talk about not to get too personal here, but I have two parents that are now in they have dementia. And over 3 years, it was a long, slow process. because there was not a facility or wasn't opening facilities there, they live in Falls Church. So it's a little harder for everybody to visit them as much as we like to. We still do once or twice a week, but it'd be a lot nicer if we had facilities like this right in our vicinity. And so the goal is, to kind of continue as the area changes, as we do see demographic changes in terms of aging, and you see, frankly, just population increase in the area. There's a need for that, and we'll have Mr. Rowe and Mr. Boz again to talk a little bit about what the numbers behind and what they're projecting there. But the goal is to kind of use this process to get ahead of the curve, anticipate the need, and position themselves in a way to continue to provide that service for the community. Next slide. Again, with each other, it is a very happy place. It's a very active place. You could look at the photos here, and there's a list of various activities that people do here. But it's what you would expect. It's a high end, very well engaged, continuing care facility, and it's a place most people would like to be able to retire, and as they go through physical changes and like that, be able to stay there but stay engaged. Next slide. And again, this kind of talks to what we're looking at for the future. I think you probably have heard in a lot of the media, they call the silver tsunami. The country is aging. You were seeing that particularly in Northern Virginia. This is a looming issue for Northern Virginia, and it's a looming issue particularly in Fairfax County. There is a lack of senior housing in McLean. There's a lack of senior housing, frankly, all over Fairfax County. And the goal here is to basically, because recognizing we have that long process that we talked about, both the approval process, the construction process, and then there's financing processes associated with this. These things you have to look ahead and you have to be able to kind of project for it. So that's what we're trying to come to you now to begin this. And like I said, we are at the first pitch of the first inning. There will be a lot of community meetings. What we wanted to use this process is to also understand, start getting connections with the community groups that would like to talk to us about this process going forward. Obviously, we'll be working with McLean Civic as well, but with our neighbors and to understand, I think Mr. Del Bianco had a question about, can these processes be used to look at ways to leverage, solutions for the community as well, as projects go forward. And I think one of the things we're looking at here, these are older, bigger facilities, and we're very aware that there's a stormwater management issue in Piment Run, and so recognizing a lot of these buildings were built really kind of before stormwater management, at least more modern stormwater management, and the last of these buildings certainly were built well after the adoption of the modern stormwater management controls that the state adopted in 2014 under the Chesapeake Bay Act. That's going to play a big role as we go forward here. We are hopefully going to be able to, provide better solutions for the community and be a responsible citizen and, be responsible from an environmental standpoint as well. But that's just one of the many things. Transportation will also be a big issue. These are, not huge traffic generators, but they are traffic generators. They are tied into the transportation network. And so those are some of the things we'll be looking at as we go forward. The next slide. I think here I'm kind of starting to repeat a lot of what Heather already said, so I'll be brief. But you see the three parcels that we have right here. The Silvestri is located across the street. Silvestri is not part of this application, and we are looking at those three parcels right there. The goal is to essentially increase density, knock down some of the buildings, come up with new, more modern buildings that are better positioned, and also, frankly, are what people expect from nice high-end continuing care facilities. And we'll talk about that in the phasing process a few other slides. But right now we're at the asking for up to a 1.3 FAR maximum on the property. And, part of the things we're committed to providing is with that is, A, will be increased independent living units and medical care beds, but also preserving 48% of the area's open space. And as I said earlier, talking about integrating sustainable stormwater management features into the property. Next slide. And again, this kind of just really reiterates the same things I already talked about here, so I'll cut through this. But, the goal is basically to go through the comprehensive plan process, get more specific language applicable to this property and talking about the need for the area, and also looking at where there are other areas within the comprehensive plan that this proposal ties in and supports. The senior housing goals under objectives 1 and 5, advanced healthy communities under other healthcare goals, other areas, and this will be a part of a larger debate, larger discussion as we go through the comprehensive plan process. But the goal is to, work with the community, come up with a solution, and make sure that it, is well documented within the comprehensive plan, because, from the community standpoint, I think you want to be protected by knowing that, there are guidelines for what this property should be and guidelines for what this property should not be. And also there's some sort of, guarantee that, what we say we're going to do in the comprehensive plan process is carried out in the rezoning as well. All right. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So talking about right now, if you look at, this is our proposed phase 1. And, as Heather said, right now we've got 135 independent living units and 67 what we call medical care beds. All right. And those are the existing buildings you see right here in gray. Okay. And then what we're proposing to do in phase 1 are 4 new buildings that you'll see in white here. And we're looking at, if you look around, there's building 2, building 1, building 3, and building 4. All right. And the goal basically being through phase 1, increasing the independent living count from 135 to 344. And the medical care count would go from 67 down to 55 temporarily. Okay. Next slide. Now, the next slide, the major thing you're going to see is the old Vinson Hall building, the big tall one, 7 stories right there, is gone. And so is if you go down to on Kirby Road, where they have the parking garage, that building is gone too. The other 4 buildings that we just talked about in phase 1 are now remaining. They're all shown in white there. But the new buildings are buildings 5, building 7, and buildings 4. Okay. And the goal basically being through this phase is this is where we start doing a bigger increase in the medical care. We go from 344 independent living units in the end of phase 1 to 349. So 5 unit increase. And medical care goes from 55 to 129. And so with that also, not all of these buildings are residential buildings. Like building 3 is going to be, recreationally oriented. And, some of these buildings we're also looking at having, more kind of community activity spaces and interactive. They're not just residential. They're, the goal, what you expect. You want the amenities, you want those kind of meeting spaces and stuff like that. And as we get through this also, one of the things we want to talk about too is also finding ways to make this more, because it's great for the residents, it's also great for the surrounding neighbors, to have people coming onto the site and interacting more, and so that's something we'll look at a little further, but, that maybe some community space on there as well, but, getting activities on the site and doing things, community oriented thing, not commercial activities, but things, that you're keeping with some of the, the goals and objectives and the efforts they have right now that we saw in the earlier slides, like the scouts, the schools, things like that. Last slide. All right, and so this is just in many ways kind of realigning restating kind of what I've already said. At the end of the day, what is motivating this is there is a very clear demographic need emerging, and it is, to go through a process like this, to position yourself for that, you got to start doing it now, because you need to be in place. This is going to take 5 to 7 years to have facilities like this up and running and be in place. And so that's what we're trying to do. It just, by delaying and delaying and delaying, if we were to delay further, those facilities won't be in place to serve the community. We are very interested in working with the community to enhance community benefits, because frankly, we're part of the community too, and that's going to make it a better community for our residents and for the families that are, have their family members here. And so, how do you do that? Well, you start, as I said, there's comprehensive plan, there's rezoning, ultimately site plan and the like, but it all starts with the comprehensive plan. And really that is where, you get probably the most meaty discussions, because the other ones are more technical in nature. But, understanding each community as we talk to the folks, and we definitely want to hear people and have, one-on-one conversation with the communities. We're happy to come out to you guys as well, but also in the public process too, understanding what are the needs, what are the concerns, how can we work to address them. What you've seen proposed here on these plans are initial proposals. All projects change over the course of a development process. They changed hopefully in response to community concerns and looking for joint solutions. And that's what we're trying to do here. So with that, I think that's the last slide. Or Heather, do I have one more slide? Maybe like a goodbye slide? I can't remember. We have a goodbye slide. And so there's the goodbye slide with our residents out there. And it's just, I think this is a nice way to kind of end it. This is truly who Vinson Hall is. It's a wonderful community, and they've just got to be positioned better to address the emerging need that we're going to have from a demographics standpoint in Northern Virginia, and particularly in the McLean community. And with that, well, thank you very much for your time. That's really all I have to say. Rob, Rick, is there anything you wanted to add, correct, or anything like that?
Not at this time, Mark. Thank you.
All right. With that, like I say, the goal is not for you to listen to me. The goal is for us to listen to you. So I'm going to step back and, Clara, Heather, thank you very much, and let you guys turn the mic back to you guys, I guess.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. So with that, thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm going to open the floor for questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to say. You can still use the raise hand feature. And we also still have the chat going. So however you want to get to us, and we'll sit here and answer questions. Just a reminder about the Planning Commission dates. So we will have those Planning Commission workshops, May 1st, 15th, and 22nd. Drainsville District is going to be going before Planning Commission in the first section, so it'll be the May 1st meeting. Workshops are open to the public. You are welcome to attend and participate and continue to follow this through the process. So I see we've got some hands coming up, so I'll go ahead and turn over. Steve, if you want to go ahead and start us off.
Sure. If all right, Steve Del Bianco, I go first. Okay. Old buddy. I live directly across the street, across Park Road from Vinson Hall on Park Road. And I couple of questions. One, the knocking, we're also, in case you're wondering, on the wait list to move in there. So we're going to be tenants inside Vinson Hall at some point in the not too distant future. The area that is directly across from where we live right now is that very green area with the drainage thing. Now, will that be gone?
Can we, Heather? Can you pull up the proposal, the plan? Mr. Top, I think you're talking about the area where it looks like where building 1 is located right now.
No, building 1.
New proposed building, yeah. That area.
Building.
Yeah.
We are not directly across. We're directly across from where right now it's just pure green. We are just a little up Park Road from what was the Bay's property. That is
right.
The one where I assume that little road that is just a little south of us.
I guess what I would say is, as currently proposed, a lot of that green area there, that kind of when you kind of come down the hill, there's kind of that green area. Some of that area will be developed with a new building, and you'll see that building. That's building 1 right there.
Yeah.
Some of that area will be set back fairly significantly from the road, and we're proposing. You don't see it here drawn all the way through, but there's be a winding path kind of going through there, and then we'll have kind of a service drive, which is kind of mimics where the existing kind of little pathway is there on that side. But yeah, I would say a lot of that green area, or directly you're referencing it, probably 2/3 of it's going to be, would be in building 1.
Okay. Now, so that's clear, because that's going to come right directly opposite where my house is currently. I'm not sure my house will be here then, but whoever is going to buy or rebuild is going to be facing that. I assume
I live on a 1958 split level on a 4/10 of an acre, and I've got people who've got memos in life buying houses next to us and knocking everything down and putting
which is what we're expecting.
Yeah.
The other thing, I guess, is you discussed building 7. Now, if we move in and we move into the original, what's going to happen? They're going to be rotating people around while you do these various construction?
Yes. There's entry fees, and there's also, there's affordability requirements, in terms
Yeah.
of, we'll have, there'll be units for folks with affordable, there'll be at affordable rates too. But yeah, it's basically just moving people around. That's part of, I mean, I'm looking at more Rob and Rick there, because that's gonna be kind of their burden. But the goal is to, once a building is financed, you have to do the delicate dance of making sure that you understand who's going to go in the building, who may not want to go in that building that's being taken down, and wants to go back in. How do you do that? But yes, I mean, long story short is they will find a home for everybody one way or another. That's how you handle it.
Okay, all right. Well, we're at too early a stage here for any real concerns, and I expect I'll be living somewhere in the Vinson Hall complex by the time construction starts. But okay, at this stage, you've answered what I need to know about this.
And by the way, I think on the last part of our slide, and Heather put it out too, is you have the contact info. We've got Vinson Hall has a dedicated email address. For anybody that's follow-up questions on this, thank you very much, Heather. And then, I know Heather staff has also, points of contact as well. So anybody, if you're like me, every time I hang up a phone, I always remember, damn it, I had one more thing to answer. And
Yeah.
questions.
Let me ask you then, that Vinson Hall address, is that map that we were just looking at, is that available there? Okay.
It's available there, or if anyone wants to send an email to that Vinson Hall address, we can email you the copy of the entire presentation.
Oh, that would be great. Okay.
And this presentation will be published on the project website as well after tonight's meeting. So probably within a couple of days, we'll have it on the website. So all of this will be there too.
And what's the website is?
We put a link to it in the chat. It's kind of a long URL, but if you have access to the chat on Zoom, you can pull it up.
Over there. So what they're asking for is permission to build out to the road.
Got it. I noticed Steve Del Bianco had a question in the chat and also has his hand raised, but the question in the chat had to do with the service drive and getting clarification on whether that would provide vehicular access. Is that just find that again?
As my understanding here is, the service drive access will have like vehicular access for service vehicles. That's not, the goal is to have, think of it, your POVs, privately owned vehicle, that's mostly going to be coming off of Kirby Road and the existing Old Dominion Drive entrance right now at this point.
Thanks, Mark. The question would be, when you keep this concept slide up, with your existing 18 acres, existing comprehensive plan, and the FAR that you live under today, how much of the expansion could the organization do without seeking a plan amendment, take into account parking, open space, and stormwater management?
Parking wouldn't be too much of a problem, but it's the question of the density is what's driving this, And so yeah, I don't have the last approval for this thing. I think is a 2008 2009 approval. Does that sound right?
Well, do the math. Do the math for me. I don't want to get it wrong. If it's 18 acres and you use the current FAR, how many units does that get you compared to what the concept wants to deliver?
The current approval, it's the 18 acres, and the 18 acres, and it's 18 acres, but the 18 acres is 1.2 to one unit to 2 units per density. But then it's also got a public institution, private institutional classification on there. What drives the density right now is the existing special exception approval from 2008, 2009. And that's the thing that says you can have 235 units on there. You can have 55 medical care units. My understanding is we are built to existing capacity right now. And so when you look at, you say, okay, well, what are we trying to grow? Existing capacity is, let's say you're going from 235 to 349, for independent living. If you're looking to go from 67 medical care units up to, 129, essentially it's about a 50% increase in independent living units and double in terms of medical care. You cannot do that unless we go through
Got
the
it.
process.
So without changing the comprehensive plan, you can't really add any net units on this site. You can renovate and replace.
There's
do-
an argument. There's an argument, that you could say, you could seek this through a special exception. I don't think we're comfortable making that argument. I think, when we looked at this, we said the better process is to kind of come through a comprehensive plan process and be a little more forthright with the community and not try to kind of just sneak it in through a zoning application, and to use the SSPA process to
You wouldn't
say,
see.
this is what,
They're
put
gonna
the
get
cards
rid
on the
of
table. This is what we want to see,
and put it.
what we're trying to do. This is why we're trying to do it. And then, at that same time, have folks say, I either like this or I don't like that, or I like this, but if you're going to do it, I'd like you to do it in this alternative A, or if you're going to do this, also, I want you to address stormwater management, or I want you to address, vehicular management, stuff like that. It's just a more transparent way of handling yourself. It's more gradual, but I think, if you can take it through a comprehensive plan process, get a comprehensive plan that's supportable and approvable, and you can do a rezoning that's consistent with basically the bargain you struck in the comprehensive plan process.
That's right.
And then ultimately, remember, once you got the rezoning done, you still have the site plans, and the site plans have to come in. They have to be consistent with the rezoning. It'll be a slower process. It'll be a lot more conversations, but it's just the way we want to handle it.
Right. And thank you, Mark. And been here 20 years in Franklin Park, and it was 13 years ago that Franklin Park was among the neighbors who worked with Admiral Martin and Vinson Hall on the previous expansion, adding the Willow Oak building and the parking garage. So that was a process where we felt Vinson Hall management, the consultants and attorneys that they hired, were very forthcoming, were very receptive and accommodating of concerns we raised about what it looked like from the street, stormwater, open space, tree preservation. And it was a process that MCA and Franklin area felt pretty satisfied with. I hope we can replicate that on the next round.
That's our hope as well. And our commitment to meet as many times as it does to make it happen too.
Anybody else have any questions? Really, we have time to answer anything you might be curious about, again, about the process, about.
Could you tell us about the workshop that happens on May 1? What should we expect if residents show up for that?
And Katrina, why don't you take a shot at answering that?
Sure. No problem. So the May 1st workshop, and I will just caveat that because there is always the possibility. I don't foresee this happening, but as we go, because we haven't finished up all of the screening meetings, so there is a possibility for some adjustment to the schedule. But I really do anticipate the Vinson Hall going on that date. Typically, what you could expect. Now, we do have something called a consent agenda. So if we anticipate that there aren't any speakers for nomination, an item can be on the consent agenda. And then things would be just approved as a group. Now, if we anticipate, absolutely, if we have any speakers for a nomination, then it would not be on the consent agenda. And the way that would work would be that staff would give a presentation, and then Mark or maybe one of his teammates, or who I'm assuming might be Mark again, would also give a short presentation. Again, very short presentations. It would be at the government center, in the auditorium there at the government center. And then folks from the community are welcome to come speak. Now, it is a very short amount of time to speak. We're about 1 minute because we do have a lot of nominations. Also, if anybody shows up, they don't anticipate the night before, they don't let us know ahead of time that they'd like to speak. They're always welcome to come the night of, and we can pull things off the consent agenda as well. And so that's really how it would
Right.
work.
And the
you would
planning
just speak.
commission
Yep.
will be sitting up front, staff will speak, the
Yep.
applicant will speak, there could
Yep.
be public comment. But
Yep.
what report will staff put out to help to educate the commissioners so that we can understand what they've been told about the projects?
Sure. So about a week prior, because all of this is a very condensed time frame, we will be publishing a staff white report. And in that white report, it will have kind of all of the information that is actually currently available. It will have a summary of all of the meetings with it. And it will just talk about basically the process involved with that, as well as some kind of statistical information about all of the nominations that we received. So that will be published about a week before the start of the of the Planning Commission workshop. And the Planning Commission, we also plan on giving them all of kind of the comments and everything that we've received via email or in public input too. So that is all the information that they will receive as well. And they will receive the staff one pagers that are already available on the
Saw that.
website. They will,
Yeah.
they will receive those as well. So they will get a really large packet of information on all of the nominations. It'll consist of, like I said, the white paper that I'll be putting together that has all the information on all of the nominations. They'll receive the one pagers. They'll receive, the illustrative plans, all the information that the nominators presented is in their submission. That's what they will receive. So it's really a lot of materials, and this will also be a chance. Also, want to mention the planning commissioners, if they wanted to hear about a proposal or about one of the nominations, they can also pull it off that consent agenda if it were on that. So that's and then this will give the planning commissioners also the opportunity to ask questions and discuss the nominations as well. And then then they will be able, they'll consider all of that information. They'll take preliminary votes on those. And then they'll have we're scheduled for June 5th actually to have kind of a markup. That's where they would be really making their recommendations for what nominations would go on the work program. And then that would be their recommendation that would go then to the board, and the board would make their action item on our actual work program. And we also have our staff recommendations too, that will be part of what's going forward to the Planning Commission. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, Katrina. I
Mhm.
see we have a hand up from Connie.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Sorry for being late. I have a simple question. If you don't mind, put up the staff recommendation, please.
We don't have a staff recommendation. You mean the concept?
Oh, is that the only slide we have?
How about the one pager? Do you want to see the one pager, Connie?
Yeah, sure. Hopefully this is an easy question. What's the current zoning for this piece of property?
Mark, do you happen to know that offhand? I do
I
not.
don't know the
have-
actual zoning. I know it's under a special exception. I mean, the special exception is what governs it. It's a residential. I forgot what it is, but it's a special exception is what governs it right now.
So it's a special exception in the residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
But the county zoning has this thing
I'm
called.
saying it's R2. Andrew.
It's R2.
Yeah.
R2. Okay. There is the zoning category called CCRC. I would assume this property falls right into CCRC.
Yeah, that's if this thing goes through the comprehensive plan process, and then we would have a rezoning application. The rezoning application would probably use CCRC.
Yeah, which would allow you to up the density greatly.
It would allow us to. Our goal is to ask for the density we want through the comprehensive plan process. Have the comprehensive plan language dictate, say, okay, we've agreed it's going to be this many units and this thing, which is not actually in the current plan, which is kind of amorphously drops out there. Well, I think what we want to do is use the comprehensive plan process to state very explicitly what the limits are going to be. And then use the rezoning to be consistent with that, because remember, you can't get the rezoning approved unless it's consistent with the comprehensive plan language. my view, when we take this thing through, the whole goal of this really is to really kind of strike the bargain and work with the community to see what we want through the comprehensive plan process. And everything else that builds on beyond it, the rezoning, the site plan, stuff like that, should all be consistent with whatever is in the comprehensive plan language.
I understand. So have you looked into, if it was rezoned to CCRC, what is the maximum density allowed?
It allows you
Units allowed
to
on this
do
property?
whatever the comprehensive plan says, So you could have and that's why you're able to use that zone anywhere else in the county, So there may be
Right.
areas where you might strike a higher density, and that higher density might be more appropriate. What we've asked for here is what we think is needed to support the community in the area, and what we think is going to can be built in a way that's sensitive to the surrounding properties and still in keeping with the character of the community. We're not looking to come in with a greater amount of units than what we've already said. And
Okay.
frankly, we shouldn't be able to. We should come through the comprehensive plan, agree on what the density should be. The rezoning should do that, and then that would prevent anybody from later on coming in there and increasing that as well without having to go through a similar public process.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at the amount of stepping. Looks like you're trying to step down into the single-family residential on the south and east side with the stepping and keep it high on along Dominion. If I recall correctly, there's already a fairly tall retaining wall along Dominion frontage.
There is a tall retaining wall. I mean, looking at this, there would be new buildings where buildings 1 and 2 would be new buildings. All right, building 6 is where really that's a parking garage right now, and so that would come down. You see building 4. So we would be introducing new buildings. Building 1 and 2 would be into new areas. Where buildings 4, 5, and 7 is actually an existing 6-story building. Building 7 would actually kind of reduce that by a story. And the goal is basically trying to, if you look at, you can see we're trying to kind of build up towards the center of the property and closer towards the shopping center, and kind of basically scale down to the single family residential. That's the goal, with the theory behind what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve, you were talking about streetscape, or you're talking about specifically Kirby Road, not Dominion, were you?
Ooh,
I'm not sure which Steve she was directing that to.
Oh, okay. The Steve of
From the neighborhood?
Planning and
or-
Yeah,
Zoning.
2013. In
Yeah, he and I
2013,
both serve on
the
planning.
comments that we made in 2013 with Admiral Martin and the team was that the Kirby Road side
I see.
shouldn't
Okay.
have, 5 stories straight up right at the street level, but rather step back the top stories. And you'll see that if you drive by it today. And that is what we focused on, was that bulk plane along Kirby.
Yeah, that makes sense because that's right at eye level, right?
We had nothing to say about the view from Chesterbrook Shopping Center, since that's up the hill in a different way.
Right. That retaining wall got to be 10, 15 foot tall with a big sign on it. Okay, that's my question. It would be good to cut a section through Dominion and just see current volume versus the proposed 7-story, 6-story.
Yeah, you've got with the I don't know if we have the one that shows the existing. Do we have that?
Yeah, I'm flipping around Google View at the same time.
Yeah, but transportation can be a big part of this analysis too. Yeah.
Correct. Because you only have one way, one point of entry, right?
Well, we have a Kirby Road entry and we have the Old Dominion Road entryway too.
That's true. On the furthest end.
Yeah.
Yeah, the site itself is pretty hilly. So
Yes. Yes. It is.
yeah, given it's a retirement community, you're basically relying on retaining walls to slap a flat slab on this 18-acre.
Yeah,
essentially.
and I guess it's also important if we have, and again, not to go down too many rabbit holes, but I'm happy to go down rabbit holes if people want me to.
No,
But I think you're right when you talk about like Yeah, you have grade changes and blank like that. And remember, this is folks there's mobility challenges and stuff like that. Obviously, ADA is the bare minimum of what we try to do. You know, so if you look at all these buildings, you'll see that the goal is to have them all interconnected. To make it, so every building has elevators, everybody has air connectivity. So you can get around, and if there's a class you want to go to, or there's some sort of event you want to go to, or there's a little party going on there, or there's something going on in another building, and your mobility inhibited or something like that, in the worst weather, you're able to comfortably get to where you need to be without, frankly, a natural environment or grade changes presenting a challenge. You've got interconnecting building parts,
Right,
and then you get escalators and stuff, elevators and stuff like that.
right, right. Yeah, this model is very similar to Erickson retirement communities. This is sort of the Main Street concept.
I think this will be, and again, where I live down by Mount Vernon, there's a place called the Fairfax, which is really nice. And the Fairfax is the Army equivalent of this, Army Air Force equivalent of this. And that's, assisted living, independent living, memory care, and stuff like that. And it's very nice, And my parents were there, and they decided they didn't want to go there. So they're out there in this other place. But when I look at this, I say this is actually a little bit better, just because the buildings are all integrated. You have a lot of those buildings are connected, but there's some that just aren't. So you have some people need to leave. They want to go to a dinner at this one particular place. Well, you've got folks that need to get out in the elements, and sometimes there's sleet, sometimes there's not, sometimes there's rain, sometimes there's not. This won't be a problem here.
Right, right. Within the campus is fine.
Well, it's within the campus also, and then you get outside of the building too. You look at you do have let's look out down Park Road. You look down Park Road, Kirby Road, and the goal is to continue to have these kind of nice little walkable areas that both provide an area for residents to walk around and enjoy in the natural environment, but also frankly act as gateways for the community to be able to enter and explore that from a pedestrian standpoint too as well.
Could I throw in just a question here?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and this is completely out of the blue, but that little triangle that hangs there on the, I guess that's going, what is that, north or west? That on the not the shopping center side, but on the other side of Old Dominion. There's that triangle of small stores and
Right.
I think there used to be a bank, but dry cleaners, a couple of
Pizza place and stuff.
pizza place. You got it. Has any of that ever been made to take somehow, but it would have to, I guess, be bought up?
Someone would have to buy it up. Like I've actually been consulted by a couple of people on that. They're owned by different people.
Yeah.
Lot legacy kind of smaller business and family held things, and they frankly they've got good, well performing properties that are strategically located in a very nice community.
So there was no interest in them selling.
I would have to defer to Rick and Rob about whether the history of whether Vinson Hall has ever approached them like that. I know that a couple of those folks have consulted with us on certain things to do with their property, and these were small, closely held family businesses that had been there. I'd say probably since the 40s or 50s or so. And they were just doing well. And
Mark, this is Rob. Nothing, I've been here for about 3 years and we've never heard anything or, seen any action, any type of anybody approaching us about any of that. Rick's been here for about a year. I may be able to defer to Stephanie. She's got the longest tenure here. And perhaps maybe she knows, but not from not from Rick or myself.
Not that I'm aware.
Yeah, this was just a throw in, only because it's while those properties are doing okay, I don't think they're huge, except for the rather good Iranian restaurant. I don't think there's anything greatly memorable about that group of lineup, but that's okay.
I think the strongest thing those properties have going for them is they're owned and paid for.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's typically the situation you find where properties have been long since paid for, so they don't need to be performing particularly well, from a business standpoint. Just, their cash flow needs are much less.
Yeah, oh, that's, just wondered. Otherwise, I have no questions today.
That's all I have. Thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you.
I'll defer to the community. Anybody else have any comments or questions, or if not, happy to give people back their time, and defer to Heather and Clara. It's their show.
I
We'll
think
talk.
if we can just bring up the everybody's contact information one last time.
I did draw on the screen and I can't figure out how to delete my drawing. So they're gonna be, you might see them
Okay.
over the screen.
I like it.
Okay. Let's see. And so we have the email address, and of course, if you just indicate which case you're interested in, and thank you, Mo, for putting Heather's email address in the chat. The email on the screen will also get to Heather if you indicate that it's for this regarding this proposal.
Now, wait, what did you say? What do we do?
If you wanted to send any comments, or if you had any questions of staff, of Fairfax County staff,
Yeah,
you can either email Heather, that her email address is now in the chat, if you can find the chat function for the meeting. It's that email address on the screen, the DPD SSPA.
yeah,
That one will also work, and it will get to Heather if you indicate that your question or comment is about Vinson Hall, or
Okay.
if you say Kirby Road, we'll know which one it is.
okay. And she's that also where they can send me back a copy of
Yeah.
the plans. Okay,
Yes.
Yep.
very good. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you,
your
everyone.
time.
Thank
Thank you, Al.
Thank you all.
Good night, everybody.
But
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Yeah.
You too.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye now.